Um, so welcome. I would like to talk to you about custom code as it pertains to Drupal, and try to give you some tips on answering the recurring question of whether to do something in a custom way or whether to try to find a contributed solution. Real quick, can I get a show of hands? How many of you mainly work on Drupal 7 sites as opposed to Drupal 8? Okay. How many mainly Drupal 8? Okay. That's good. I guess anyone. So, well, I'm in the same boat. I wish someone would pay me to work on Drupal 8, but it hasn't happened yet. So, most of what I say here today will be more applicable to Drupal 8. Drupal 7. But the same concepts will apply when we get into Drupal 8. But I'll talk a little bit about some of the differences. Real quick, a little bit about myself. I'm Brock Fanning. Drupal.org. I'm also Brock Fanning. And I'm a Drupal developer, and some of the industries I've worked in are government, content marketing, and academia. I bring that up because government and content marketing in particular are polar opposites when it comes to this question of custom code. And that's really what got me thinking about this, because I worked in content marketing first and then switched over to government, and it was very striking the difference in their approach. Content marketing is essentially bloggers for hire. Organizations will hire you to write their content and make the website and post the content and everything. So it's kind of a all-in-one solution for clients. And in that situation, custom code is very common because the client really just wants to get whatever they want. They don't care if it's Drupal or WordPress or whatever. They just want it to look like this and to accomplish their goals. So if you don't do what they want, then you have to kind of try again, and you end up doing a lot of custom code. So at that agency, custom code was just kind of expected. That was just the norm. And every site was its own, basically, custom project. And it worked out pretty well. In that case, we built the sites, and then we also maintained the sites, and we also ran the sites. Like, we were the ones who were posting the content. So we were there from, throughout the whole life cycle of the project. So it worked out okay. On the other hand, in government, it's much different. In government, typically, if you can do something, if you can solve a problem or meet a feature request or something with a contributed solution that involves no custom code, and it's okay, and it basically does the job. It might not look exactly how they wanted it to, but if you can do that without custom code, that's huge. That's a big plus, and that's for a lot of reasons. But one of the big ones is that in government, you've got contractors doing things, and they might be on the project for a couple of months or 6 months or so, and then all of a sudden there's someone else who's totally brand new to the project, and they have to ramp up on everything. And so contractor 1 put a bunch of custom code in there. That could be a problem for contractor 2. So also I'm sort of a party pooper in the sense that I'm a developer, and I know that custom code is fun. I mean, that's what we as developers like to do. And so when we were given the choice of whether we should, write some custom code or not, we always will prefer to do the custom code. And so I know, spoiler alert, I'm going to be kind of arguing against custom code in general, but there is a silver lining that we'll get to later. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. So first, some definitions here. So what is custom code? Well, basically, it's any Drupal code that does not have a presence on Drupal.org. And I have just a few examples. The common thing in customized sites is if you have some blocks or pages that just need to have custom PHP for some reason. If you use alter hooks, hook form alter is a huge, a very common use of custom code, or hook HTTP alter, etc. Pre-process hooks for kind of tweaking your theme a little bit and making, allowing your front-end developers to use certain classes. Any modules or JavaScript that's for site-specific functionality. So some just feature requests that really would not, it's only for this site. It doesn't make sense on any other site. Some agencies have like team-specific frameworks or modules that they just expect to be installed in on every project. Any general purpose module that you have that maybe it's totally generic and not at all specific to a site, but you just haven't put it on Drupal.org, that still counts as custom code. And then lastly, just radical departures from Drupal norms, and that's where you just go totally outside the box and you bypass large aspects of Drupal, and still you're working on a Drupal site, but you're not doing things the Drupal way. And that's, I think, a lot of fun. I've done that myself, and it's really cool. But it is very dangerous for the next person that takes over the project, because it's, if it's not the Drupal way, then it's going to be very confusing to the next person. But I do think that that's useful, just in general, to think outside the box and do those kinds of things, because that's what will push Drupal and kind of advance us to possibly the next step. So apparently, when you export Google Docs to PowerPoint, it messes some things up. So sorry about the weird spacing. What is contrib code? Well, it's basically the opposite. It's any Drupal code that does have a presence on Drupal.org. And so that includes modules, themes, install profiles, and also patches. Patches. Quick show of hands, who's familiar with patches? Okay. For anyone who's not, a patch is basically the way that we, as developers, communicate code changes to the other members of the community. So if we find a problem in a module or add a feature to a module, we make the change, and then we upload this patch file that tells everyone else what the change was, and it's an easy way for them to also apply the same change to their own code base. And that's done by basically commenting on an issue on Drupal.org and attaching the file to your comment. And that's what I mean by attaching a patch or uploading a patch. And I think that once a patch is uploaded, it is part of the contrib space. It's on Drupal.org. It's got a URL that's never going to change. So it just becomes part of contrib, in my opinion. Some people might have different opinions on that. So you walk into a room and are given a feature request to implement on your Drupal site. Do you open up your text editor and custom code it, or open up your browser and look for a contrib solution? I know that obviously I'm a developer, as I said, and by a huge margin, the most fun option is to custom code. It's so much more fun to try to just do something yourself and to get on Google and look for a module. There's no competition here. But I'm going to argue that you should probably do the latter first. A couple of reasons why not to do custom. One is, I kind of touched on this a second ago, but cost of training and documentation, difficulty of handoffs. So whenever you write custom code, you have to think about training the next person that has to look at that custom code, or maybe fix a bug in that code. And to do that, you need to also write some documentation, because you might not be there. And all of this just adds more work. So it's a higher cost than just the time it takes you to write the code. You've also got to think about the next step. And also, it's easy to kind of gloss over that. Since you're the developer, it's not your problem if the next person has a hard time. But sometimes you are going to be the next person, so it's good karma if you actually do think about this kind of stuff. Also, there's a lack of outside support. So when you write custom code, it's all on you. There's no one's going to help you fix bugs in that code. No one's going to notice bugs in the code besides you or your client. And so all of that maintenance and testing and everything is just up to you. And also there's the risk of reinventing the wheel. Sometimes you could just not know about some module or library that's out there, and you could spend some time doing a custom solution and just kind of, you could have been doing something else. You could have just used a contributed solution and not have had to do that. An interesting question is, what happens when custom solutions get contributed? So like say you've got a module, just a custom module that you're using on a site, and it does a certain thing, and you decide, well, this is probably useful to other people, so I'll make it more generic, take out the name of your site and everything, and just make it a generic module and then upload it to Drupal.org. As soon as you do that, all of these negatives here kind of go away, because for one thing, if something is on Drupal.org, it's part of the Drupal canon, then you're not really expected to have to train people on it. Like for example, a kind of extreme example is the views module. Before Drupal 8, views was a contributed module, but when you hire a Drupal developer, you're not really expecting to have to train them on how to use views. It's a contributed module that you just kind of expect people know how to do. And so the same kind of goes for anything. If it's a module that's out there, then you're not expected so much to have to train people on, and the documentation is up there, and there's community of people who will help with that. And speaking of the community, so there's also all of a sudden you've got tons of outside support. You've got a whole world of people who are finding out how to break your module, and noticing areas of possible improvement, pointing out things that could be better, finding incompatibilities with other modules or certain versions of PHP or whatever. There's just tons of people who are all helping you test and make the module better. So that's a huge win. And also, the Drupal community is really good at telling you if you're duplicating an existing module. Like if you post something on Drupal.org and it duplicates something that someone else has done, someone will tell you pretty quickly that, and that's good. That keeps things focused. So, by the same token, or on the other hand, why not contrib? So, some reasons why you might not want to use a contributed solution. There are really a lot of reasons, but here's a few kind of categories. If your client is very inflexible, or your requirements are inflexible for whatever reason, you just got some very unusual particular requirements, or the environment is unusual. Like you have to do this on this certain old version of PHP or whatever. That can kind of rule out a lot of contributed solutions, and that can kind of force you to do some custom code. Also, if the contributed solution that would be appropriate is overkill, for example, if it's too complex, if there's too many features, or it's just really hard on the server, then you might decide, and you wouldn't be wrong to decide to just do some custom code. It's much simpler and does what you want without all that extra stuff. It could be that just everything that's out there is insufficient. Doesn't have enough features, or doesn't do what you need to do. And also, well, I kind of talked about this earlier, but incompatible environments. So if you have some hardware restrictions that require custom code. So some contrib modules overcome all these problems by they're just great modules. They're focused. Their scope is limited. They do what they need to do. well written, and they support lots of different environments. But for the cases where they don't, you can always change contrib. This is the nice thing about open source is we can change contrib. So we'll talk more about that later. So obviously I'm kind of leaning and trying to steer you guys more towards contrib as opposed to custom when you can. Problem is that's not fun, like I said. So here's the silver lining I was talking about. Here's how to have fun without writing custom code, and that is to get involved in contrib. Like I said, we can change contrib and core also. Remember that Drupal is open source and all the code is there. So if you're working on something, if you're testing out a module and it just doesn't quite do what you want it to do, or it has this bug that is keeping it from being a valid solution for you, the code is right there. So all you've got to do is just look into the code and see if you can fix it or make it better. Another thing to do that I encourage you to do is to get really comfortable with patches. A lot of it's pretty common for agencies or clients or whatever to be uncomfortable with patching modules for their site. Patching a module for your production site can seem kind of dangerous. But I think, and since everyone here is mainly involved in Drupal 7, so in Drupal 7 especially, you should really get comfortable with patching modules, because as time goes on, more and more module maintainers are really focusing on Drupal 8, and the Drupal 7 versions are just they're going to get kind of neglected, and that's not a bad thing. That's just Drupal 8 is the new fun toy, and it's not really that exciting to keep maintaining these Drupal 7 versions. So more and more you're going to have bugs pop up that don't get, the solutions, the fixes don't get merged into the module, and there'll just be a patch there that you're expected to apply, or that you'll have to apply if you want to solve that problem. So get very comfortable with patches. And the idea is that, why this is a way to have fun is that you're writing custom code, essentially. You're writing code, you're doing what developers like to do. But instead of it being just for your client or just for the site, it's for the whole Drupal community. You're uploading your custom code immediately, and everyone else can benefit from it. But this is the one little snippet I'm going to show. This is an example. How many people here are familiar with Drupal Make? Okay, cool. So for people who aren't familiar with that, it's a way to just catalog all of your contributed code. All of your modules, your themes, your libraries, even your core, your version of Drupal core, any other JavaScript libraries, or anything that you didn't write, you can catalog it in one file, which is just a list of projects, basically. And some people who are familiar with Drupal Make might be used to a different syntax that has a lot of square brackets in it. This is just the same thing, but this is YAML, and Drush supports both. But this is an example of, in this case, specifying the media module, and you can see that it says branch. It has a long number there. That's the specific commit that you want to use with that module. And I recommend doing that as opposed to just doing like the dev version or this or that version, because it's very specific. You know that you're going to get that particular version of the module. And then you can list the patches. And so patches, for people who aren't familiar with them, if you just want to apply patches manually, it's kind of a pain. You have to download the file, save it somewhere on your computer, and then run a git command or something to actually change the code. And then you have to kind of document it somewhere, so that you don't forget that you patched this module. You have to save the file in some folder or something like that. Drush Make takes care of all that for you. Just by listing the patches here, when you run this, and the way this works is after you've made this file, you run a Drush command. and it just churns through the whole file, downloads everything, and you got it. And then when it gets to these patches, it actually applies the patches for you. So it takes away all of that tedium of having to do all this yourself, and it's huge because instead of, whereas without DrushMake, I think applying more than 5 or 6 patches to your site would be that'd be kind of the limit. Like after that, it would be really too hard to maintain. But with DrushMake, it's unlimited. Like you can just apply all the patches you want, and it's no harder than anything. I definitely, I don't not only recommend it, but if you kind of want to take what I'm suggesting and going with it, I recommend. I think it's pretty critical that you use this approach. Some people, the common approach for maintaining your contributed code is using version control. So, committing the code to Git, and that's it. Maybe you'll use drush DL, download the module, and then you'll add it to your version control and to your site. This is basically a replacement for the drush DL part. That instead of downloading modules with drush or just from the website, you use this to download the module. And then at that point, you can either commit it to your repository. That's one option. Some people prefer to not commit it to the repository and just run this on their production servers also. But that's another question. And before I leave patching, because I think patching is pretty important. So just a few more words about patches. One thing is that patching, in my opinion, is like acceptable hacking. You probably heard the common mantra in Drupal: don't hack core, don't hack contrib. And there are good reasons not to do that. And when I see someone solving a problem by changing some code in a module and then just committing that change, that's troublesome to me. I don't really want to see that. But I hope that hasn't really scared people off from looking at module code and changing stuff around just for experimentation. Because, like I say, it's open source, the code's all there. If something's not working right, it's always possible to just fix it. Just go in there and fix it. And so I think of patching as acceptable hacking because you're welcome to hack and do whatever you want, and then once you get your change or your fix or whatever it is, if you then post it to Drupal.org as a patch, then it's okay. It's no longer hacking, it's actually contributing. A few little tips on how to get your patch committed. So once you upload your patch to a module, it's kind of up to the maintainer to decide whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, or whether your code is good or bad. And then, if they decide that it's okay, then they'll merge it into the module. One thing you want to do is make sure that the issue is well described. It includes like the problem, motivation, the solution, any changes to the module, any changes to data. And this is important because this will make it so that the maintainer can easily tell what the problem is, easily recreate the problem and understand it better. If the maintainer doesn't really know what the problem is, they're probably not even going to bother looking at it. After you post the patch, you change the issue to needs review so that other people can test it out. And also, don't be impatient. I see a lot of people who post patches and then proceed to just hound the maintainer about why hasn't this been merged? How long does it take to get this merged? I don't think that helps. It might get you a little bit more attention, but I don't think it's that useful in general. And really, patches don't need to be committed. You don't have to wait for the maintainer to commit the code. I've done this countless times where I'm trying out a module, it's got a bug, I need the bug fixed, or I need a feature that's not in there, so I hack it, I add the feature, I create an issue in the module's issue queue, I catch the patch, and then I use the patch on my site and I deploy it the same day. You don't have to wait for any reason. It's just, as long as you're comfortable with the code change that you've made, it's totally fine to just immediately use it. And it's also, I don't recommend that kind of thing with a random patch that someone else wrote. If you just find a patch on the site and just apply it and then go ahead and deploy, it's probably not a good idea because you need to understand what the code is doing. But if you've written the patch yourself, then obviously you're going to be very comfortable with it. You know exactly what's going on. So, like I said, embrace patches. You don't have to worry about only using the stable version of the module, especially in Drupal 8 where it's almost impossible these days. But just a caution that the patches need to actually make the project better, not just different. So you shouldn't submit a patch that just changes the button from search to filter because your client wants it to say filter. That's not a useful patch, and it doesn't really help anybody. On the other hand, if you submit a patch that maybe makes the button text configurable so that you can change it in the configuration page, that's a useful thing. So the idea then is that instead of writing custom code for everything, or for whenever you are trying to decide between custom code or a contributed solution, the first thing you do is look for a contributed solution. That's your go-to, preferred approach, and you will basically just have to analyze some projects. You just go around on Drupal.org and looking at things and try to figure out try to just judge them basically. So I've written just a few points here, and it looks like it's got a little bit cut off, but I'll have the slides up on the site. So some red flags that you can kind of quickly notice. Obviously, if you just install the module to test it out and your site's broken, that's not good. So don't use that module. If it impacts performance, that's something to worry about too. Like if the pages load much slower after installing it. If it's not supported, that's also a problem. Again, it's not a deal breaker because in Drupal 7 less and less modules are supported, just because the maintainers are more focused on Drupal 8. But it's something to notice. If it has bugs that just prevent it from doing what it was intended to do, that's bad. If it doesn't have a stable release, that's also something to notice. It's not a deal breaker, but it's just something to take notice of. And if there are other projects like it on Drupal.org, then that means you have to kind of test those out too. So some tips for analyzing modules. One, obviously, you go to the project page. Look at the usage statistics, so how many sites use this module. This is not at all a deal breaker. If a module has 4 people using it, 4 sites using it, it's not to say that it's not a good module. It could just be a very specific module. But if you look at a module and it has 200,000 people using it, then that's a nice time saver because then you can be pretty confident that it doesn't have performance problems or any lack of support or things like that. You can look at the date of the last commit. This is how to tell if something is supported or not. If you look at the date of the last commit, that can tell you how active the maintainers are really. And if the date of the last commit is the same as the date of the first commit, that's a problem because it means that it's not really the module hasn't been evolving. It's just uploaded and forgotten about. Just look through the issue queue. Look for any issues, like some red flag types of issues are this module doesn't work. How do I use this module, etc. If there's things like that in the issue queue that are unanswered and maybe old, that's not a good sign. Look at the available releases. Again, if there's a dev version available, that's all right. If there's only a dev version available, then you have to kind of wonder, is this ready or not? And so you can be a little bit more critical about that. And then finally, just try it out. And you got caught out here, but also look at the code. And that's something you can do as a final step, just if you want to, especially if the module does not have a huge, like a large usage statistic, and you just want to be, you're just being critical of it, and you just want to be sure this isn't a crazy module that's doing something that's not smart. Look at the code and just see if there's anything going on in the code that would be bad for your site. So I've been, pretty abstract. So I wanted to just mention a couple of, case studies, a couple of real-world examples that I was involved in. And so this one is an example of the contributed solution being overkill, maybe. And the site for this was a very large site, so hundreds of thousands of nodes. And the request was to add a meta tag to all nodes of a single type. And it was just a static string. The meta tag didn't depend on anything. It was just a static value. The same value, same snippet of HTML added to all nodes of the site. Obviously, the contributed solution for something like this is the meta tag module, because that's exactly what it does. I've used it many times before, and that was the first thing I thought of. The custom solution, so the alternative to a contributed solution would be implementing these couple of functions. And Drupal adds HTML head inside of a hook. And that solution is maybe 10 lines of code, something like that. So it's a really small, it's a really lightweight custom solution. So I did a lot of analysis for this. I looked at the project. I asked the managers who had requested this, I asked, is this the only meta tag you need, or do you need more meta tags? Is this the beginning of is this the first of many requests like this? And I was told that no, this is the only thing we need. And I looked at the difficulty of the custom solution. It turns out it's very easy. It's just a few lines of code. And I installed meta tag the module just to test it out again. I did benchmarking. So this is something you can also do. I use JMeter to benchmark. So there's a GitHub repository called Drupal JMeter tricks, I think. And it's a good place to start with this. But it lets you do something like impersonate a user, creating a node, logging in first, and creating a node, saving the node, editing a node, and logging out. And you can do that like 100 times in a row or 100 times at the same time, 100 times in a row. And it really is a good way to test out the performance impact of the module, because you can do this before you install the module, and you get an average page load speed. And then you do this after, and you get an average page load speed, and you just compare. So when I did this, in this case, the difference between the original site and the custom solution was, there was no difference. It was the same page load speed. And the difference between the original site and the meta tag module was 3 to 4% slower. And that was significant. I mean, it's not a huge number, but I was thinking this is one ticket, and I don't want, if every ticket I do slows the site down by 3 to 4%, that's not a good trend. So so that's why I went with the custom solution in this case, just because there was overkill. The module was doing more than I needed to do, and because it was doing so much, it was slowing the site down. And but I have a twist here at the end, and that's what if the need for meta tags increases. So what if my managers were wrong, and they really do need more meta tags? And later they say, okay, well, actually we need this other meta tag on this one, and we need this one to depend on the summary of the node or whatever. And as these requests keep piling up, then eventually it gets to a tipping point where the custom solution is not maintainable, and I should switch back to using meta tag, because then the 3 to 4% increase is not so bad. So let's see. I'll kind of speed through these. I don't want to use up all my time on this, but how do I have until noon, or is it 12:15? Until noon. Okay. All right. Well, this is a case where an obscure recipe turned out to be the solution. This was a request for importing like two-dimensional data, just basically like Excel spreadsheets into Drupal, and then displaying them in arbitrary ways. And in this case, it was a phone directory, so just a list of people and their phone numbers. And I needed to be able to import them into Drupal and then display them, like with a filter or whatever. Obviously, the immediate contrib solution that comes to mind is node types, and like a node type for phone contact, and then fields for everything, and then use the feeds module to import everything in there. But the problem is, at scale, that doesn't work, because this solution needed to be used many, many times, not just for a phone directory, but for a bunch of other things. And I didn't want to have a content type for every little thing, every request of this type. So I didn't go with that. Custom solution would be kind of an elaborate thing that, of course, I was excited about doing because I'm a developer and I like custom code. So I was really pretty much sold on just doing this in a custom way. But someone else on the team, who was smarter, pointed out this recipe, a module called data, which allows you to basically just create database tables and of course feeds. And then there's a sandbox module called feed data that integrates the two, so it allows you to import into this database table that you create, and then views. But the data module also integrates with views, and so you can use views to display it. So, and it turns out that was definitely the correct approach, because we did the whole, we made the whole, we satisfied the request without a single bit of custom code. Okay, so this was just a real quick one where I had a request, and it had some requirements that didn't really get satisfied by the contributed solution, which was, this was doing one of those larger, smaller text things on the page, and the catches were I couldn't use cookies, and I had to work with panels. And the contributed solution, text resize, this is the common Drupal.org solution for this. It required cookies, and it didn't work with panels, and so I just wrote a couple of patches and was able to use it. And this one was a much larger endeavor, but this was a case of a site that was using the media module, and the client wanted image captions and credits in the WYSIWYG. So when you attach an image, they wanted to be able to edit the caption and credit right there. And media modules that's what it's intended to do, but it had a lot of bugs, especially with the CK editor, which is the WYSIWYG that we were using. And so this was a very large project, but basically I just dove in and started fixing these bugs one by one, and getting the features that I needed and fixing the problems that were there. And 15 plus patches later, it works. I won't candy coat that. That was a lot of work, because it was a lot of patching and testing and learning about this framework that I didn't know much about before. But it did eventually work out. And the nice thing is that those patches are there for other people that want to use them. So, real quick, one good way to minimize custom code is to do a contrib and custom combination, and that's where you use the module that basically does what you want, but not quite everything, and then you use an alter hook or some sort of a hook that's provided by the module to change it, to make it do what you want it to do. Quick tips are look at the .api.php file for the module. That's usually where all the hooks are listed. And if not, you can always just try hook form alter or hook with our hook page alter. A couple of warnings to be future-proof. Try not to assume that a crazy long array is always going to be the same. If it's an array that's 10 deep and it has a lot of weird keys in it, it's a little bit dangerous to assume that that's always going to be the case. And so if you depend on it with your alter hook, you might get burned later when it changes. This maintaining custom code, I wanted to give a few tips about that, but basically this is an area where I'm still learning about this. I'm still kind of thinking about this. But one thing is overcome it. But whenever you do have to use custom code, just comment like everywhere. Don't worry about if the comment is unnecessary, just go ahead and do it. Keep it in its own folder. There's the problem with features modules, which I'm still on the fence about. How many people here use features? So typically when you use a features module, you've got like one features module for one content type. Like you've got an article content type, and so there's a features module dedicated to that. I don't consider features modules to be custom code because they're automatically generated. They're not. No one's writing that code. So technically they're contrib. But that module is very tempting to put your custom code in that module because it's there and it's about articles, and if you have some change related to articles, it's tempting to put the code in there. So I'm kind of on the fence about whether to put custom code in the features module, but I do that sometimes. You just have to document the fact that this module is a features module, but everything in the .module file is custom. Yeah, and if anyone has any ideas, I'm open to feedback there, because I'm still looking. It would be nice if there was some tool for auto-generating custom, like docs for your custom code. About getting estimates, so I'll just have to make this quick, but basically, as developers, we're optimistic, and we want to make people happy, and we want to impress people. So we tend to give very low estimates when asked how long something is going to take. So keep that in mind, as if you're a developer, keep that in mind when you're giving your estimates. But make sure that you mention whether it's custom or not. So when someone's asking you for an estimate, and you're going to have to do something custom, make sure that you tell them that. And if they don't know, what that involves, make sure that they know that this is custom, and this also involves, this cost of maintenance and documentation. And for the project managers here, like when you're asking someone to do something, make sure that you ask. When you get the estimate, make sure that you ask, is this custom or not? Is this going to require custom code, or is this going to be purely contributed? It's important, I think, that everyone is aware of all these costs with custom code, and that there's communication back and forth about that. I have a list of modules. We don't need to go over this, but it'll be in the on the site afterwards. And these are just modules that kind of like allow you to kind of imitate custom code. They for example, views, it's basically a way to not have to write your database queries. It just does that for you. So you can look over that list. So to quickly sum up, I think custom code is fun, but unfortunately it has a cost. So my advice is to focus your energy, if you're a developer, instead of writing custom code for a site, to contribute to help the modules that are already there. And you want to make sure you get really good at judging contributed projects. Think about the next developer. Don't be afraid to act. And remember that Drupal is not a binary file, it's text. If there's something that's giving you a problem, then just look at the code. Don't Google for answers. Like if you're having trouble with something, try this. It's really common to Google, like if we're having trouble. Instead of Googling for your answer, just look at the code first. Just go into the code and see if you can find the answer in the code instead of Google. So thank you. I guess we're kind of out of time, but if there are any questions, grab me. I'll just be out there.